Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions in the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. On this show, I interview lawyers ditching the billable hour and experts who can help attorneys move beyond billing time. Thanks to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel. Links to both in the show notes. More on them later, and use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED when signing up. You get 10% off, and it supports the show. The best way to support the show is to share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. I'm thrilled to have with me today, fan of the show and subscription lawyer in his own right, Martin Parsons. Welcome to Law Subscribe.
Thanks, Matthew. I am excited to be here for sure. I've listened for a long time, all 70 episodes, so I'm excited to be one of your guests now, from listener to guest.
It's great, and at the time of recording, I have had a couple more people, though their episodes aren't live yet, but this is becoming a recurring thing, which means I know shouting into the void works sometimes. But I've had a chance to look at your website, legaladvocacyheadquarters.com. And if you want to look at the pricing, everybody, that's /subscriptions, obviously links in the show notes. But just in case my listeners haven't come across what you're doing yet, go ahead and give yourself a little introduction.
Yeah, so I'm a second career lawyer. Spent my whole adult life as a military guy, 4 years in the Marine Corps, another 22 years part-time and full-time in the Illinois Army National Guard. I retired with no plan for my life and decided to go to law school. So I came down to Southern Illinois, where I'm still at. Went to SIU Carbondale, had a job for a while at a small firm that did business and employment law, and then had a really cool opportunity to go to the law school and restart their Veterans Legal Assistance Program clinic. We focused on doing VA disability claims appeals and discharge upgrades, which was just really fulfilling work. But during COVID, on some long COVID walks with my wife, we were reevaluating, like a lot of people, I think, during COVID, how we wanted to spend our time, and decided that we wanted to have more control over it. She worked at the law school too, though not a lawyer. So we decided to strike out on our own and do our own thing. So I'm not a true solo. I do have an assistant. She takes care of all administrative stuff, and she has just fantastic customer service skills too, is her gift. So we struck out on our own, and as someone second career who just hated the billable hour, I was just trying to looking at different ways to do it and how we were going to do it, and stumbled on some alternative billing practices before we necessarily settled on the practice areas that we have now.
Yeah, I mean, you said that you hated the billable hour, but you didn't say it outright. So I want to know that you were billing time then at some point when you were working for this other firm then?
Yeah, when I first got out of school, working for this small firm, tracking the time. And the frustration of tracking it, but probably more frustrating is having it marked down by your boss for whatever reason, and oftentimes then they would tell me it's got nothing to do with the quality of your work, or that the time that you put in wasn't valuable, but this client, we have this deal, or I feel like I want to help them out more, or whatever. And then it's a hassle to track it, and then frustrating when you get it discounted. So there had to be a better way to do it.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so interesting. So you're I think only the second person on my show who had a military background. So first of all, thanks for your service, of course. And Jason Foscolo was the last one who was on, and he's the food lawyer, and he was one of the early pioneers in the subscription model. So I know it's a small sample size, but I wonder if there's something there to the military training and the efficiencies and the things that you learn that maybe is why you had just the billable hour wouldn't comport with your background. Do you think there's anything there?
I think there could be, when you think about the efficiencies that go into the things that help us or want us to be able to do subscriptions, and procedures and all the technologies and things that make our practice more efficient. I think that definitely goes back to my military background and wanting structure and processes and things, which then obviously helps us provide services in a flat fee or a subscription model.
Right now, and I do see like the shield that you have, like you're leaning into the military theme a little bit, which is nice. Is that why you're doing it?
Yeah, it was. We picked the name and kind of the vibe of it, the brand before I had decided on our practice area. So if I had thought it through a little more, and at that time, if I knew we were going to be doing small business advice and nonprofits, I might have gone with something that was a little more on brand. But yeah, that's typical. That's really why it's that connection with the military without saying I do veteran stuff.
Right, right. And I still think that there's something there because, just like the law is pervasive in at least US society, I mean, so too is military, everything. So, your subscription levels, right, continue the theme protector, sentinel, guardian, right? And while, off the top of my head, like I don't necessarily affiliate one of those things as like more valuable than another. Like I could appreciate like the branding around picking those titles. Because for me, I'm very generic with my branding. So there's still something to be said about having a particular brand, which you're clearly doing here.
Yeah. And it was much more generic. I think it was standard plus and premium. I think it started that way. And then at some point in the last 6 or 8 months, I got the idea that I wanted it to be something different. And that's where that came from.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there's like this is one of those things where it's like do as I say, not as I do as a practitioner, because like I keep it super broad and general, and there's that's more of a me problem. But like from a branding perspective, I think any branding expert will tell you niche down, pick something more
Mm.
specific, something that's identifiable, right? Like even something that's generic but not applied, right? I'm not a trademark attorney, but like when I say Apple, do you think of the fruit or do you think of the devices that we use, right?
Exactly.
So, if I think of the Guardian, protection plan with legal advocacy headquarters, it'll be easier to think about something like that than just, oh, the business plus subscription, subscription attorney LLC.
Exactly. That's the hope.
Right.
That's the hope for sure.
So you're still early then in the journey of being as are most of us of using the subscription model and these uniquely named subscription levels. So like, what have you seen in terms of, I guess, like product velocity would be one startup way to see it. Like are clients identifying with it? Is it making sense for them? Like, how has this rebrand changed the game for you in any way, if it has?
It's a slower process than I had hoped because I am really involved in our chambers and some small business incubators and some local SBA stuff. And I talk about the subscription model and how it can benefit them, and their eyes light up and they get really excited and they tell me what a great idea it is. But I have more nonprofits that have found that beneficial than my small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They're both growing, but the nonprofit side seems to be growing a little faster. And unlike you, I don't require all my clients to be subscribers. I just don't, in Southern Illinois, I don't have the client base to be able to do that yet as we're building. So it's the subscription side of my practice has been a little slower, but this year it seems to be picking up more traction.
Yeah, and I mean that's an important lesson and takeaway, which is not only are you trying to pick a market to serve as a business owner, let alone an attorney, but you have to look at the market that you're also actually in, too,
Right.
and adapt accordingly. And so I think that's a good takeaway there. But before we get too deep in the weeds, then Martin, tell me like how was it that you came to the subscription model? Like what was your origin thought process on that?
I'm working at the law school. We use Clio as our practice management platform. And through that, I learned of Clio Con. And one of the early ones I listened to had Kimberly Bennett and Blaine Pitch and Fadoo talking about it. And so I heard it and it just resonated. Subscriptions. That's interesting. And wound up talking to both of them. And then that just really started my research. I was one of the I got some early access to Fadoo. And even though I have not completely rolled that out with any of my clients yet, because I just don't have, I don't know if they're going to use it. I've tried some other things, but she was really where that journey started. And it wasn't too long after that I stumbled on your podcast because you had begun back about mid 2021 and then took a hiatus and came back. But that's where it really started. I'm in some Facebook groups that brid along some the happier attorney with flat rates. and value pricing.
Right, right. Because that's really there's certainly more value-based pricing, fixed fee, flat rate attorneys out there than there are subscription
Right.
lawyers. So yeah. And there's great overlap. And I mean, frankly, I think every single fixed fee attorney has massive opportunity with the subscription model because they've already separated the idea of time equals money. And so like it's
Exactly.
an easy win for them potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
then
I do that. I'm a hybrid because I
yeah.
do the subscriptions, and most of my work is flat rate and value based where I can. And that's also on the website. That is something that my clients, even when I can't get them to come in through on the subscription, have really appreciated the transparency in pricing. And that has been helpful.
Right. Right. I mean, absolutely. And at the end of the day, while I do make clients subscribe, I only make them subscribe at $20 a month. And then
Right.
if I do a bunch of flat fee work for them after that and they unsubscribe, so be it, like that's okay. I've had several now that I've been in business for almost 2 years at the time of recording anyway, I have had clients who have signed up, gotten the work, unsubscribed, and have reached back out wanting me to help them with more work, right? And so like, okay, here's the link to resubscribe, and then we'll rock and roll again, right?
Mhm.
And it's a no problem. And I think I hypothesize anyway that enough of that, eventually they're just going to stay subscribed, and that's part of the reason why I choose to do the de minimis amount, which is $20. I mean, look, it could be $9, $10, it could be $50. It depends on the market. It depends on who you're
Mhm.
trying to serve. And all it means is it's like Costco, like when you or Amazon Prime, when you run out of something, where are you going to go? Well, you're already paying to be a member. I might as well take advantage of my subscriber benefits, right? So that's anyway the what I've chosen to do, and I think because of like Netflix and Amazon Prime and Costco and things like this. I mean, I don't know. I've only been to Southern Illinois a few times, but you guys have to have a Costco or two or three there,
We've got,
right?
well, yeah, St. Louis has one, but we've got some other things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like this whole subscription model thing, though, like even paying a de minimis amount, like Netflix is everywhere. Like people are used to paying $10, $20 a month for this
Yeah.
subscription or that subscription. So I feel like, I know it's risky, but I feel like there's like people everywhere, some de minimis amount, some like, it's enough to make them want to continue to use you,
Mm.
but not so little that they just kind of forget about it and you're engaged in some kind of unethical, like just collecting fees kind of a thing,
Exactly.
which I'm not suggesting anybody do. So then you didn't actually say it out loud, but I kind of got the sense that there are some situations where you might still be billing your time. Is that right?
Yeah, there are. There still are. I will have to admit that.
And
Yes.
so why do you still do that? Let's
Part of it
figure it
is
out.
because of being newer to the practice. There are certain things that I just don't know yet how long they're going to take, and not having done it yet. And I just don't think it would be fair necessarily to the client to bid too high or me to bid too low. So I'm feeling them out and then keeping track of my time or using some other tools to keep track of that, to figure it out so that then the next time I don't have to.
So the goal is move away from billable time in any instance that you feel that's the
Certainly.
only option. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've got some things that are sort of ongoing that I'm helping clients through that require a little bit of time here and there, not quite really enough to get them onto the subscription, but too much for other things. So still working it out. It's just part of the new and trial and error.
Yeah, I will say that managing a subscription plus flat fee business like I do for a lot of the a la carte stuff is more difficult, right? I mean, like the technology just isn't there for law firms for clients to come in, select their a la carte flat fee services once they're a subscriber and check out in a cart, right? Like if those were there, it would be much easier to manage. But I mean, I find that even if I'm like, I mean, it depends on like exactly what it is. So like, tell me, I have to get closer to my mic for this. We're entering the subscription therapy session of the podcast. So subscription therapy. Here we go. So like, tell me then, like, what are you billing time on? Is it litigation related work? Is it like what sort of practice areas are you doing that on?
Yeah, and I do not do litigation if I can help it. I refer that out in all the arenas, and I have some attorneys here locally. And I also do trademark work, but not trademark litigation. So I also refer that out. But I have done some, it's really not litigation, but we're helping clients get through some challenges. So I'm working with other attorneys, kind of mediating, negotiating along the way.
Dispute
That's the looking.
resolution, but not litigation, not going to
Yeah,
court.
exactly. Yeah, some dispute resolution, not litigation in the courtroom as such.
And that's
Um,
billable hours because you
yeah,
just
that's
have
what
about
I'm doing
100
right now. That's
applications.
primarily what I'm doing billable. I did have a pretty large purchase of a business that I had not done one that large before. And I felt that I just needed to do that one hourly to figure out what that looked like, what that size of a purchase was going to look like.
Right.
So, if I just, instead of spending hours trying to figure out, because it can take a lot of time for a new matter, thinking about what it's going to, the time, but it's not just about time. It's not, well, I know it's going to take me 2.5 hours. It's also what's that value to the client, and coming up with that is not, like you said, it'd be great if we just had to check the box and we could check out. So it takes some time to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the bigger things that I'm working on figuring out.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you're willing to talk about this because like this is the thing that needs to be talked about on my podcast because I've already had a lot of attorneys using the subscription model on talking about how they're doing it, but so few of them talk about some of the pitfalls or where they're not sure how to price things. So, for example, ABA Tech Show this year, Alt Fee, who's been a guest on the show, they're like a company that says, well, we're going to help you solve that exact problem that you talked about, Martin. Sean Hardeen, who's been on the podcast, but the episode isn't live at time of recording, he is a consultant and former lawyer who helps lawyers do exactly that. He helps them value-based price their unknown things like a big business transaction or dispute resolution type case, right? So there are attorneys, recovering attorneys, coaches, software, because this problem is not unique to you, Martin. It's it is a problem. And especially as more and more lawyers graduate from law school and decide to open their own shop, we lack the institutional knowledge of what should something cost, period. Let alone and that's even what should my billable hour rate be if they're billing time, right? There's just this lack of knowledge and it's uncomfortable to just pick a price and go with it and see if it works.
Exactly.
So what I do with the negotiation stuff, because I do some dispute resolution as well, is, I do have my negotiation subscription add-on. And it comes on when negotiations start and it goes off when negotiations end. And my per page pricing applies during that time. So if there's documents to review as part of that dispute resolution, it's $50 a page to review it. If I'm drafting or analyzing a settlement release agreement, $50 per page as part of that thing. And all the while, the $200 subscription negotiation add-on is being charged to the client. Now, I've had Mark Stiving on the podcast as well, and he's a pricing expert, not for lawyers, but a pricing expert. And one of the things one of the takeaways from that episode was, he said, if you do have some sort of end result in mind, like a business transaction, like a dispute resolution type situation, you also have, and this is where the hybrid flat fee subscription model comes in, is, they're subscribed and maybe there's a subscription add-on, but there's also this success fee at the end, right? And that success fee starts at a certain number and then goes down as time goes on. Because usually people want the transaction closed or the dispute resolved sooner rather than later. For most people, that's what's valuable, right? I mean, I guess if you're on the defendant side or the defense side, maybe you don't want to settle sooner and your reward should be higher the longer it takes to settle. And maybe that's something you and your client can talk about. You have to, consult your spiritual leader and your legal ethics attorney about that. But that would be a way to handle it. Is okay, so the value, the dispute is valued at this amount. My ongoing negotiation monthly fee is X amount. And by the way, I mean, they know exactly how much it's going to cost every month the more this goes on. So your client is going to be pushing you to settle because their legal fees continue every month that it goes on, right? So now they are incentivized to settle because of the way that the fee is structured. And if it's worth, $10,000 or whatever it's worth, maybe there's a 10% success fee. If it settles and resolves within 3 months, then it's a 9% success fee, based on the total damages amount. If it settles with, between 3 months to 6 months or whatever it is, right? There are ways to structure these kinds of things with subscription add-ons and flat fees. It gets a little complicated. But once you start thinking about these things, and I'm so excited, I might even share with you just the link to the non-published, but rough edit of my Sean Hardeen episode, because he talks about how he helps his clients do this. And it's really illuminating in how to think about offering your client, you have good, better, best pricing on your website for your subscriptions. But what about for the business transaction, offering them a version of good, better, best but it's like a flat fee, or it's a hybrid and subscription and flat fee. And he talks about that. And so like there are ways to do this without having to bill your time. And if you give your client the choice when it comes to like this value-based billing, it's like, well, what's it worth to you, if we're able to close, in a month? Or what's it worth to you if, something else happens? And, it depends on the situation, the business transaction. And let your client pick, what they're willing to pay to a certain extent, because then they are empowered. Even if you gave them a really high number that you feel you're not comfortable charging your client, if they picked that, then they picked that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I really like that.
I gave you a lot, Martin, but yeah, give me your thoughts on all that.
And I've made some notes. I really like that negotiation add-on because that is something that is going to continue to happen in my practice, is because, as you just referenced, oftentimes the attorneys on the other side, because they're billing by the hour, aren't as incentivized to get it done. But I can at least maybe manage it on my side price-wise. And it'd be a whole lot easier for this client that some months I'm billing $70 or $80, and next month it's 150 or 180 because it's been a little more time of just some, emails or texts or whatever, if they just had that predictable amount. So I made a note about a negotiation add-on for this as well, because they're business clients, so that it's sort of a gateway to the subscription.
Right. Exactly. And
long term.
As far as the technology side of things, for me, I have them sign on with a subscription, an additional subscription package through my software. A lot of softwares that let you do subscription will let you do this. And you can like cap it at however many months, or it's ongoing and you have to manually go in and turn that off once the negotiations have resolved. And something I also do is I just charge a flat fee for like a demand letter and a response.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's all you need to resolve a thing. And it's sort of silly to start charging a subscription add-on if the demand letter settles the thing.
Right.
And I charge a little bit more for that sending that demand letter and responding to the response than I would for my monthly subscription add-on, just because I know I'm going to have to do a little bit of negotiation past just drafting the letter.
Mm-hmm.
And then only if it really goes beyond that, like, okay, they're responding to our demand, let's see if we can't settle it right away, then I'll charge the negotiation subscription add-on. Because I am ultimately trying to save my clients time and money. Like, that's what I'm trying to do.
Exactly.
So I offer that first, but I make them subscribe at least at $20 a month before I even offer the subscription add-on. I know you're not comfortable with that yet, Martin, but maybe one day you will be.
Yeah, I'm not saying, I'm not completely closed to that idea. I think I've got to get people a little more warmed up here in Southern Illinois to some of these alternative billing structures.
When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database, since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com, and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney, or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form and scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show. And that's another important question, and that is like your clients that that are hiring you. Are they institutional clients, or are they latent legal market, meaning that like they've actually never hired a lawyer before because they've been too afraid it's too expensive?
Many of them haven't. They might have had someone help set up their business, maybe register their LLC or their organization. Some of them have had a little bit of help from lawyers, but most of them haven't. It's oftentimes the first one. And the same thing for my nonprofits. I don't think any of them, other than maybe just getting started, have had any legal help. Partly because there's no one here that really does it either, which is something I found out as we started doing this. And I would tell people that, I help this nonprofit and that nonprofit, and it's a side of my practice that's really grown in the last 6 or 8 months. Really, I've picked up quite a few fairly large nonprofits who have never had a lawyer, but get significant money in grants and really need one in order to stay compliant and just get their nonprofits going in the right direction. And nonprofits have a lot more potential legal challenges than a small business does, especially when it comes to keeping on the right side of the IRS and the state of Illinois in all the filings. And they stubbed their toe when they were along the way, and they lose their 501c3. The Attorney General of Illinois comes after them for a bunch of money, and then they're done helping people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, that in and of itself is a niche, maybe you lean into that. Although I have to imagine, like the metropolitan area of like Chicago is like where a lot of the lawyers and businesses are focused. So I got to imagine in your market, there's fewer attorneys and less competition for all the potential work that's out there. So maybe it doesn't make sense to niche down. I don't know. You tell me.
I'm not ready to just do that, but between the small businesses and nonprofits, but I am looking at some ways to serve them differently because there are no resources. A nonprofit can't go to the Small Business Development Center and get help because their funding only goes to help for-profit businesses. So there's just very few resources. So I'm looking at some smaller subscription options, maybe something maybe it's a different subscription outside of my legal practice, maybe that just provides resources, not just legal resources, maybe some other things I've been toying with for them because there's not much help here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, huge opportunity for other lawyers to think about is to moving to markets where there are fewer attorneys though, and being able to cost effectively, deliver legal services, whatever that looks like in those markets.
Yeah.
And even as we move more virtual as a profession, like, look, you're in Illinois, I'm in Illinois, I have a virtual law firm, but like, I'm not actually even targeting any of the businesses in your local area. And a lot of my clients ended up being local to me, even though I'm a virtual law firm, because where we are is where we do our marketing, just like you, right. I'm involved with my chamber and everything. So there's just something to be said about that in-person element, even if you have the option for something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. And I have an office mostly because I can't work from home. I realized that during COVID. I was working at the law school then, and I was the only guy going to the law school to work because I just couldn't work from home. So when we were thinking about how we were going to do it, we looked at a lot of, working from home, working from community centers, different ways that we could do it. And we stumbled on the building and just realized it was a better fit. And I do have at least probably a good portion of my clients like to meet in person, at least the first time to get a feel for us. And then oftentimes it becomes a phone call or a video meeting later, or going to meet them at their place of business or some other neutral place. I really like to do that, go to where they're at. And we really look at as a partnership, this is how we think of it. We're very relational. So love to go and meet them where they're at.
We're like, especially for the subscription clients, I have to imagine you're a fractional team member.
Exactly.
Like you're part of the team. They're paying you a certain amount every month, and you get to know the business, or you get to know the whomever, right?
Exactly. But yeah, and that's one of the I think huge advantages of that subscription is getting to know that business, so that when they do have a problem, they call. I'm having Sally's acting up again. What do we do? And I know who Sally is, may have met her, and familiar with those challenges. We had an issue 2 months ago or whatever. And it saved a lot of time for everybody. And then we can jump in and provide advice and guidance, and without having to spend all that time giving me the background. And then they're calling us before they really need us. Our trademark slogan, proactively protecting your business. We want them to call beforehand. That's the beauty of the subscription is
right.
Call, ask me these questions, so that we don't have the problems later, the bigger problems. We can possibly avoid them or keep them smaller by talking about them now.
Right. And I'm realizing you're still early in the journey, and we'll definitely revisit in like 6 months to a year, have you back on the podcast for another check-in. But do you have any success stories, obviously without revealing any confidential client information? Like any success stories of you helped a client like proactively prevent a problem?
Gosh.
I know it's hard to think about because in the moment that you're doing it, you're not normally thinking about it, but I'll give you a couple of quick examples and then maybe that'll help jog your memory. So for example, I helped a client who went to a dog groomer. I've talked about this before. Do you remember this conversation? A client went to a dog groomer. They were a subscriber, $20 a month, $50 a page. They got, they've been going there for years, and here's a one-page contract. And they're like, I don't know about that. I want to call my lawyer about that. And so they paid me the $50. I talked to them about the dog groomer agreement. I basically said, they're waiving all their liability. I was like, don't sign that. Tell them you're happy to, be a customer, but you're not going to sign that. So they didn't, that's what they said. They still took the dog. They didn't sign it. Now, if the dog ever got injured, and I don't know if the dog ever did, they're able to recover. So I helped them. I prevented a problem of their inability to recover in the future. So that's like an example of problem prevention because they had an attorney, right? So like anything like that.
Yeah, I have a couple of them as since you jogged my memory. One of my subscription folks had an employee that they wanted to fire. They were having challenges with this person and they just wanted to get rid of them. And fortunately, they called me before they did anything with this person and we talked it through. The timing would have been really bad in because of some other things that had happened. And if they had done it, there most likely would have been probably could have been a discrimination suit filed just because of the timing and some other things that were going on. So by making the call, averted a whole lot of problems later. And fortunately for them, it kind of worked out. Within a few months later, that person who they had wanted to get rid of left on their own. So
Great.
It worked out. But they might not have called unless they were a subscriber. They might not have picked up the phone to do that. Because the reason that small business owners or nonprofit, they don't call because they're afraid of that bill. Well, I don't want to call my lawyer because if I call, I'm going to get that bill. And so I don't want to call or email or they're afraid you check in with them. Hi, how's everything doing? And they don't respond because they're afraid that you're going to send them a bill later because that's been their experience with lawyers a lot of time.
Right. And then that's great. What's example number 2?
I had a client who was a subscriber who decided they wanted to trademark their name of their product. So we were doing research preparation for the meeting and found out that someone else had recently filed for a trademark for their exact name. Client had no idea that was happening. They were coming in to see me just to get their stuff trademarked, to find out that now we've got a whole nother potential problem, which it did. And it's a case that I had to hand off to somebody else for assistance but if they hadn't have known that the window to oppose a trademark is pretty small. Mm-hmm. There's a 30-day window. And if you don't jump in then, that opportunity is lost. And so if they had come to me or talked about it, next month, probably the month afterwards, it would have been probably something they might not have been able to fix.
Yeah. Great examples. And, there you go. Put it in your marketing too. You don't want these things to happen to you. This is why you subscribe to an attorney, right?
Exactly.
It is so hard, right? And it is. Like, I don't want people to think it's easy. Like, you have this amazing model that's affordable, predictable, clients could budget for it, and helps you as a business owner with recurring revenue. And people don't just magically want to sign up for it because it's a good business model. Like, you still got to do that sales thing, and it's hard. But people that get it, and just like any traditional law firm business, the best way for me to get clients are from clients who were or are subscribers, recommending people to subscribe because it works.
Exactly.
It's just the best way because they've already crossed that threshold personally. And so it helps the other buyers or clients, cross that threshold as well.
Yeah. And in fact, I'm on a push right now of getting reviews from my subscribers because you can't tell them what to put in their Google review, but asking them if they can mention that subscription and the value it brings to them, because all of them see immense value in it, speak highly of it.
Right.
If we can just get them in there across that.
Looking again at the pricing, which again, kudos to you. You're in the small group of us lawyers that put our pricing on our website, and you have more than just the subscription pricing. You have your other flat fees on there too. But I'm going to count this as a personal victory because I've been doing the podcast now for years, and I see some of my terminology that I came up with or that I was inspired by to adapt on your website as well. So I'm seeing that. Is that the case? Did my website inspire some of yours?
There is definitely some inspiration from your podcast and your website for sure. in things that I offer in my subscriptions or things that you've talked about that I thought, I do that. I didn't even know that was a value. For example, we use Locus as our practice management platform, which has a Dropbox sign connected with it. So we have the ability to get electronic signatures. And one of the things that you talked about providing for your folks was taking that off their plate, which could be for them a subscription. So if they can drop that and I can do that for them, it doesn't cost me any more money,
Right.
but provides value. So that's something I added on our higher tier. And then there are some, I think at one point, there are several subscription attorneys that I follow and have printed out their stuff and thought about and analyzed and put in my spreadsheet as I'm trying to figure this out.
And then some other, like the projects per month thing stood out to me.
That was definitely all you.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because and I only discovered that out of practicing and testing things that failed. Like, just call it projects, just like you had so many projects per month. And that was like a huge light bulb moment for me. And it's been working actually incredibly well because it makes it so I just have to track the projects that I'm working for a client. I don't have to worry about what it is or how many things or, bill separately for research or whatever. Because that was also my biggest thing was, okay, now I started to get research questions from larger clients and I didn't want to bill separately, or I couldn't come up with a flat fee price for that. A per page doesn't really apply to that. But I was like, projects, I think this is what we're going to do to incorporate research. And I will only do research for clients who are subscribing at a level where they get projects. They get so many projects, right? So, and why not? Because like that research is it's almost never going to be a one-off thing. I'm always going to be able to capture that research and put it in my knowledge base or have that ready to go for another client. So why not have one client pay for it? And then, I have it there available for everyone else. So that's cool. Another thing I see you do that I don't do because I'm trying to do I require them to be subscribed, but you don't. And so you're doing something that I've recommended attorneys try if they don't do what the Costco model that I use. And that is for subscribers at a certain level, 10% discount on certain fees, or then 15% discount on other fees. And that is a great that's a great value if somebody wants to subscribe at that level. And so you're still doing like a hybrid subscription flat fee model there, but you're giving them that discount. And so I don't know, I know you've not been doing it for forever, but have any clients told you in feedback, yeah, I really wanted the 15% discount or the 10% discount on legal fees?
Yeah. And I shifted. So when I first started, even at the first level, they got a discount. And so my evolution has been in the last 6 months or so, as I took that away from the entry level subscribers in a hope that I could push them, nudge them. And I also initially provided the registered agent service to my base level subscribers. So I pushed all of that to the middle one, including the discount. And I have had several clients who went with that middle selection because of the discount.
Right.
Then that percent discount doesn't have as much value unless they know what what the prices are in the first place. And for me, that's why it's important to have those transparent pricing, because otherwise, how do they know what that costs? I get 10% off of your fee. Well, what does that really mean? Well, now they know that, okay, if I'm going to do this document and it's this many pages, they know what that would cost. And then they can deduct 10% and it's a true discount.
Right. Right. Yeah. Unlike, and look, it's still more affordable legal services, maybe like your Legal Shields, your Legal Zoom panel attorneys that in order to be on those panels, you have to offer a discounted billable hour rate. But it's so obfuscated because did their billable rate increase by 15% for other people before they gave you a 15% discount by being on the panel for Legal Shield or Legal Zoom, It's just, it's a much better approach when you have all those prices listed and you talked about the right incentives. Well, I mean, time has flown. So let's talk about the technology. You mentioned Locus.
Oh gosh.
Is one of the tools that you use. What other sort of tech tools are you using to power your practice?
Calendly, that was probably one of my first ones. And you use Calendly, it's fantastic. Grammarly I think it's kind of one of the forgotten technologies. It's I just push it to everybody, whoever is writing. Their free version is fantastic. If you don't have Grammarly, it's just reminding me to stick in the article in some of my emails and things that just saves time.
Yeah.
Let's see. So the whole Office suite, Grammarly. I use the ICL publications and Formula. that comes from that for a lot of my stuff. Years ago, I found this Word plugin called the Form tool, and it allows you to take your Word documents and create fillable forms out of it. It puts a questionnaire at the bottom. You can create them, and then you just fill it in and can repurpose it. I use a lot for letters and some of my basic things. And then I have Lexis for research and some video editing things. I dabbled with offering some courses at a couple of different points. So I use Thinkific. Hero Post I used for social media. And so for tracking my time, I use MemTime. Used to be Time Bro, and I got a pretty good deal for a long couple of year subscription, just because it tracks it in the background. And so even as I'm trying to figure out the values of what to charge for things, it helps to have an idea of really how long it takes me in order to build that in too. So that's, even though I don't track my time for a lot of things, it helps passively track that in order to help me.
Just saying for listeners, the relationship between time and money there is actually inverse. Because if you see something takes you a lot of time, you're not thinking I have to necessarily charge more for that. You also might be thinking, how do I make that take less time?
Exactly. Yeah. What other tool could I use or thing could I use to reduce the time?
Yeah. So
because should it take me that much time?
Exactly. Because at the time of recording, these episodes are not live, but I've actually had quite a few guests on recently that have talked about tracking their time even passively in the background. And what that allows them to do is exactly this. It's like, how do I spend less time on that and charge the same amount to increase profitability, right? And so, and that becomes the relationship with time and money. Are you using Lawkiss for the recurring fees, or how are you actually powering the subscriptions?
I use Confido, I think it's called now, Gravity Legal. Yeah. And so a combination of that and Stripe, because as you know, in Illinois, our flat fees and our subscriptions do not have to go into a trust account. But I've just found I have one just because there's been a few times, very few, when that is important. So I needed to have that. Confido helps me do that, but they also can charge for the subscriptions, but so does Stripe, allows me to do that. I use it to track some of my stuff. I use Scribe. Scribe is a screen capture tool that does it automatically and allows you to track processes. Their free version is really powerful. So I try to use a lot of free stuff, even though I have a lot of subscriptions. I start with the free things, HubSpot free, MailerLite free for my newsletter. I just started playing with Paxton AI from an episode that you released a couple of weeks ago. Canva free version, Loom recordings. I love technology, but I have my struggle is keeping it narrow, using what I have, learning all the functionality of the tools that you have too. Before chasing another one.
Yeah, you're definitely standing out as different. I think you have almost as many tools as I use, which is uncommon. And speaking of that, you and I do share something in common, and that we're a couple of white dudes who are trying to do things differently. I think we're obviously thinking differently, trying to leverage all these tools. And you mentioned your military background and how this is a second career for you, and I think that certainly makes you stand out and different from all the other white guy lawyers out there who are a multi-generational family of attorneys, right? I'm a first-gen attorney myself. But in relation, especially to your teaching, which we didn't actually get to talk about a lot, I know you do have a perspective to share on the fact that women attorneys of color, are really the ones who are doing most of the innovation in this space. And so go ahead, for my audience, share your perspective on all that.
Yeah, almost all of the things that I've learned about subscriptions and flat rates and value-based pricing have come from women and women of color, the Facebook groups I've been a part of, except for kind of the lone other white guy, Ron Baker, and his work with, in his two books, Implementing Value Pricing, Time's Up, both heavy tomes of the value pricing subscription world. But otherwise, that's where I have learned most of this. And then I teach law practice management at SIU and have talked to my students about that in that class. I also teach legal profession off and on, and they're the ones who talk to me and want to learn more about the way I practice more than the guys do. Right. Many of them, the jobs that they have lined up are to go to more traditional practices where the women are the ones who are thinking more innovatively about how they're going to practice when they get out.
Right. Right. And that's a good perspective that I don't think we've had a chance to share yet about that, about even just when you're in law school and the mindset that's there. I mean, it's not something that magically happens just because the profession keeps you down, which it does if you're a woman or an attorney of color, right? The institution does work against you in that way, as we've had guests on the show that have talked about that. But it's like a part of who they are, and even in law school, which is an interesting thing to highlight as well. Well, with that, we are almost out of time. I feel like we can't keep going, but we will have you back in like 6 months to a year to check in and see how things are going. But in the meantime, Martin, everybody stuck around to know the answer to this question, and that is, for you, is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
So I just like my students, I always send them back to what's the law say? What's the precedent say? So I did some research, and Merriam-Webster says a sandwich is defined as 2 or more slices of bread or a split roll having a filling in between. So in that definition, a hot dog qualifies. But dictionary.com, it has a different but similar definition, defines hot dog as a sandwich consisting of a frankfurter and a split roll, usually eaten with mustard, sauerkraut, or relish. But we've got to have both sides of the equation. And Eric Mittenfall, he's the president of the National Hot Dog and Sausage Council, and he's been asked this question several times, and he says a hot dog is not a sandwich. He says that culturally, a hot dog is its own unique item that transcends the sandwich category. I liked that word, transcends. So there's a split decision.
You personally, though, where do you fall then, Martin, and why?
I say yes, it's a sandwich.
Okay. And the reasoning is because of these other definitions that you gave?
Yeah, I lean more towards the bread on a piece of meat on 2 pieces of bread or one folded over. I don't always eat hot dogs on a bun. I've eaten hot dogs on a piece of bread folded at different times when I had hot dogs and no buns. So.
Yeah. What's really fascinating, I think, at least on the publication side, this will air either directly after or maybe an episode or 2 after we had someone from Microsoft using Copilot to answer this question, Microsoft Copilot Gen AI, which we didn't even talk about Gen AI, Martin. You mentioned Paxton, but so clearly you're using it, but that's a conversation for another time. So the Copilot answer, the AI answer, was all those different things that you just said, which is really fascinating to see that you did the research and came up with the same thing as Copilot. So there's a litmus test there for Copilot being accurate in its, in what it's doing. Fascinating. If people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
We've got a contact form on our website, legaladvocacyheadquarters.com, or email me at martin@legaladvocacyheadquarters.com.
And personally, you're on LinkedIn, right? If they want to reach out
to you.
or
I'm on LinkedIn. Please connect with me there. For sure.
Okay.
I'm fairly active there.
Martin Parsons, it's been a pleasure. Thanks again for coming on Law Subscribed.
It's been great, Matthew. Appreciate the opportunity.
And that's our show. Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for being sponsors. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with somebody you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email Kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.